U.S. consumer confidence falls to nearly 5-year low in April. And the World Bank forecasts global commodity prices to fall 12% in 2025. The European Central Bank's March 2025 Consumer Expectations Survey has revealed a notable increase in Eurozone consumers' inflation expectations for the coming year. The survey showed that inflation over the next 12 months was seen at a 2.9%, up from a 2.6% in the previous month's survey. The ECB stated, based on a survey of 19,000 consumers in 11 Eurozone nations, that the 3 years ahead figure rose to a 2.5% from a 2.4%. The National Statistics Institute has reported that Spain's economic growth slowly and slightly rose to an 0.6% in the first quarter of 2025. This figure is down from a revised 0.7% in the previous quarter and below the 0.7% expected by analysts. The Institute also revised the fourth quarter of 2024's growth from an original 0.8%. This economic deceleration coincided with an increase in unemployment, which rose to a 10.36% during the quarter. And on an annual basis, Spain's economic output grew by 2.8%. The Spanish government is forecasting a 2.6% growth rate for the entire year. Spain and Portugal have switched their power back after the worst blackout in their history, though authorities offered little explanation for what had caused it or how they would prevent from it happening again. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez also acknowledged that Morocco, along with France, played a pivotal role in the recovery efforts, helping to restore power to southern regions of Spain in the wake of the crisis.
Quienes están vinculando este incidente a la falta de nucleares, francamente, o mienten o demuestran su ignorancia. La recuperación del suministro se ha logrado gracias a las interconexiones con Francia y con Marruecos y a los ciclos combinados de gas y a las centrales hidroeléctricas. No existen pruebas concluyentes, este es uno de los bulos que estamos viendo en las últimas horas, en los últimos minutos, para decir que el evento de ayer fue provocado por un ataque terrorista o por un experimento, y por tanto pido a la ciudadanía, como hice ayer, el que se informe por los mecanismos oficiales y por los medios de comunicación de contrastada profesionalidad.
The Office for National Statistics has announced that the upcoming changes in how Britain calculates its inflation rate would have resulted in slightly lower headline figures for the year ending June 2024. The Statistics Office clarified that existing inflation data will not be revised and that the grocery scanner data will be run parallel to current inflation measures for a year to ensure quality. The new methodology aims to enhance the breadth of products covered, allowing the agency to gather prices throughout the month rather than on a specific day. And the CEO of the Prudential Regulation Authority, Sam Woods, has reported that Britain's banking stability watchdog has not found sufficient reason to require banks to report daily liquidity levels, despite the market turmoil triggered by the US President Donald Trump's tariffs. So Woods noted that while the authority has increased its monitoring of financial firms, they have not escalated it to the highest level, citing a recovery in share prices, stable funding markets, and unchanged customer behaviors. This came during a hearing with lawmakers as HSBC warned that loan demand and credit quality could be negatively impacted by Trump's global trade war, providing concrete evidence of how tariffs are affecting banks worldwide. And moving to Asia, Beijing's ambassador to India, Zhu Fiyong, stated in an article that China will not dump its goods in other countries despite the ongoing trade and tariff war with the U.S. His remarks aim to alleviate concerns about an influx of cheap Chinese products in global markets. In an editorial titled "Stand Up to Washington's Bullying," Ambassador Zhu emphasized China's focus on expanding domestic demand and boosting consumption. He asserted that China adheres to World Trade Organization rules and will not engage in market dumping or disrupt other countries' industries. And China's big five banks have reported narrower margins on their first quarter earnings and some of the drop in profits as the banking sector is hit by a protracted economic slowdown. In quarter 1, 2025, China's major banks reported mixed results amid weak global growth. China Construction Bank, the ICBC, and the Bank of China saw profits fall by 4% and 2.9% respectively, with all three facing shrinking margins. Bank of Communications and Agricultural Bank of China posted a slight profit gains of 1.5% and a 2.2%, but also saw margin declines. Non-performing loan ratios remained stable or slightly lower, though analysts warn they may rise in the coming months. And still in China, as the Commerce Ministry has stated that it is willing to work with Boeing in response to a media question on its website. The ministry emphasized that China and the United States have enjoyed long-term, mutually beneficial cooperation in civil aviation, which has greatly facilitated trade and personnel exchanges between the two countries. However, the U.S. tariffs have impacted Chinese airlines and Boeing severely. The statement further expressed hope that Washington would heed the concerns of businesses and foster a stable and predictable environment for trade and investment activities.
It is my honor to introduce to you the President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump.
Era in the history of our country. From that moment on, it has been nothing but swift and unrelenting action. Back to you. God bless America. China, first row. Capital and proclaim the dawn of the golden age of America.
U.S. consumer confidence slumped to a nearly 5-year low in April as growing concerns over tariffs weighed on the economic outlook. The Conference Board has said that its consumer confidence index dropped to 7.9 points to 86 this month, the lowest reading since May 2020. The Present Situation Index, based on consumers' assessment of current business and labor market conditions, fell an 0.9 point to 133.5. The Expectations Index, based on consumers' short-term outlook for income, business, and labor market conditions, slid 12.5 points to 54.4. The lowest level since October 2011, and well below the threshold of 80 that usually signals a recession ahead. White House spokesperson Caroline Leavitt has announced that President Donald Trump will sign an executive order regarding tariffs on cars. The Trump administration said it plans to announce measures to ease the impact of tariffs on imported cars and car parts to give automakers more time to relocate production to the United States. Tariffs of 25% on imported vehicles and on auto parts will remain in place, but the tariffs will be modified so that they are not stacked with other tariffs, for example, on steel and aluminum. Reuters has reported that China has waived the 125% tariff on ethane imports from the United States imposed earlier this month. China increased its levies on imports of U.S. goods, including ethane, to 125% earlier this month, hitting back at U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to single out the world's #2 economy for higher duties. The move will ease pressure on Chinese firms that import U.S. ethane for petrochemical production, as well as provide an outlet for the natural gas liquid, a byproduct of U.S. shale gas production. The U.S. Trade Representative's office has placed Mexico on a priority watch list for intellectual property rights, citing ongoing issues with trademark counterfeiting and pharmaceutical intellectual property rights protection. This year's report identifies 8 countries on the priority list and 18 on the general watch list, based on analysis of over 100 trading partners. The report's findings may influence the Trump administration's negotiations over tariffs and non-tariff barriers. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent mentioned discussions with 15 to 18 key trading partners regarding substantial tariffs announced on April the 2nd, which are suspended until July the 8th. And today marks the 100th day since Donald Trump stepped back into the White House, and already his economic agenda is reshaping the U.S. and global landscape. And here is a breakdown of the winners, the losers, and the long-term risks as Trump's second term takes shape.
It's been 20 days since Donald Trump returned to the White House, and his policies are reshaping the U.S. economic landscape. While some sectors thrive, others are feeling the squeeze. Starting with the winners, domestic manufacturers and fossil fuel producers are experiencing a resurgence. Trump's aggressive Buy American agenda, reduced green regulations, and renewed energy exploration have boosted traditional industries. Defense spending is also climbing, benefiting security contractors. However, not all sectors are celebrating. Trump's America First trade policies and expanded tariffs, now exceeding 100% on some imports, are straining global supply chains. Farmers, tech exporters, and clean energy companies face rising costs and new trade barriers. Industries reliant on immigrant labor, such as agriculture and hospitality, report staffing shortages and lost revenue. On the global front, Trump's trade stance has earned sharp responses. China and the European Union are preparing countermeasures, while BRICS nations are accelerating efforts to trade in local currencies and reduce reliance on the US dollar. Allies like Germany warn that rising protectionism could slow global recovery. Trump's repeated threats to undermine the independence of the Federal Reserve have raised alarms among investors, risking higher interest rates and a weaker dollar. His push for mass deportations could severely impact industries like agriculture and construction, which are already facing labor shortages. Adding to the complexity are trillions in proposed tax cuts, heavily skewed towards the wealthy. Economics warn of a dangerous mix: higher inflation, slower growth, and long-term harm to U.S. competitiveness if these policies remain unchecked. Trump's second term is just beginning, but the economic lines are already being redrawn. The question now is how America's rivals and partners will respond.
And in his first whirlwind 100 days for the U.S. and the world, Trump has stirred controversy as Americans remain broadly unhappy with the nation's economy. And here are snippets from the U.S. streets sharing their opinions towards Trump's decisions.
I have yet to see any actual effects of this plan, because it's hard on us. You know, we have to get gas almost once a week. I drive far from my job, and it's too much on us. I have not seen this plan in effect lowering the gas prices.
I think for the US consumer, they may start to feel more inflationary pressures from the tariffs globally, tariffing both partners as well as kind of countries that had opposing trade policy.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the Trump tariffs, they've gotten a lot of negative press, but I like them. I think that helps bring back manufacturing jobs, and it's really a great negotiating tool on the world stage. So I'm a big fan. Some people aren't. I think there might be some temporary pain, but I'm a fan of it.
And joining us from Washington is national security analyst John Rosalmando to discuss the 100 days since Trump stepped back into the White House and his economic policies and decisions. Welcome, sir, to Qnews Economic Bulletin, and thanks for joining me. Let me just start off by saying, as we've watched some of the Americans' opinions on Trump's economic decisions, how do you believe the Americans will withstand the effects of these policies, do you think, sir?
Well, I think that it's too early to tell how these policies will have long-term effects. Maybe people will feel some short-term pain, but the overall goal here is to make American products manufactured in the U.S. less expensive than foreign manufactured goods. One of the effects you could end up having is foreign companies bringing their manufacturing off from their countries into the United States, which President Trump will believe will provide high-paying jobs for American workers.
Sir, how would you characterize Trump's economic strategy in his first 100 days back in office?
Well, I would characterize it as an effort to try to level the playing field with foreign countries. Like the EU and other areas have high tariffs on American goods. So President Trump's goal here is to reduce some of the trade imbalances and to reduce the U.S. trade deficit with these countries to make America and industries more vibrant.
Have you seen any historical precedent for this level of economic disruption from a U.S. president in such a short period of time?
Well, this is, President Trump is an original. This is the first time that we've had anything like this. There's been a growing consensus among the American people that the free trade policies of the past 40 years have not been fair trade policies, but have instead traded away American industries to foreign countries.
And what do you think are the implications of the massive federal job cuts, especially within the Internal Revenue Service and public universities?
Well, let's put it this way. The IRS has been bloated for years, and having more workers doesn't make the government agencies more efficient. It makes it so that you have more people who are sitting in a federal job collecting pay. I work personally in a federal agency, and I found that all I was doing was going to meetings about meetings. So hopefully we can make things more efficient. I think that what President Trump is doing with universities is trying to take on the politicization that has taken place in American universities that has not been to the benefit of the American students.
Well, Trump has reimposed and expanded tariffs, some over like 100%, with countries retaliating. How do you see this trade war ending?
Well, I think that it's too soon to be said how this will end up. I think that President Trump is hoping in the long run to play a game of chicken and see if the other side flinches first so that we can get what he would believe is a more equitable deal.
And what do you think would be the economic consequences of the mass deportations on industries like maybe agriculture, hospitality, and construction?
Well, I think that American industries shouldn't be relying on illegal labor and being able to pay slave wages, because it has a negative impact on the earnings potential of other non-illegal immigrants. We should be working to bring in the right kind of immigrants through our immigration policies instead of just bringing in illegals.
And Trump has publicly criticized the Federal Reserve and hinted at firing Chair Jerome Powell. How might this affect the market stability and investor confidence, do you think, sir?
Well, I think that President Trump, talking about firing Jerome Powell was misunderstanding the law. The president cannot fire the Fed board chairman. It's not allowed under the statute. Plus, also, I think that he's concerned about how the Fed is, playing a role in managing inflation and managing the finance. I think in the long run, President Trump will end up winning.
Well, from Washington, that was the national security analyst John Rosalmando. Thank you so much, sir, for joining me here today and for your insights. And now we move on to the latest developments from the commodities sector. The World Bank has forecast global commodity prices to fall 12% in 2025 and a further 5% in 2026, returning to pre-pandemic levels. The latest commodity markets outlook report shows that inflation-adjusted commodity prices would tumble to their 2015-2019 average in the next 2 years, marking an end to a price boom fueled by the COVID-19 economic recovery and the Russo-Ukrainian war. And oil fell to near a 2-week low as investors lowered their demand growth expectations due to the trade war between the United States and China, the world's 2 biggest economies. Brent crude futures fell by 1.9% to $64.59 per barrel. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude fell 1.7% to $60.98 a barrel. And gold fell more than 1% as signals of easing U.S.-China trade tensions reduced some safe haven demand, while investors braced for key economic data this week to gauge the Federal Reserve's policy outlook. Spot gold was down 1.2% at a $3,300.57 an ounce, and the U.S. gold futures fell 1.1% to $3,310.20. And in markets, stocks rose as they await any progress on trade deal negotiations. In the U.S., the Dow Jones Industrial Average rose at 0.63%. The S&P 500 hiked an 0.26%, and the Nasdaq Composite climbed an 0.19%. In Europe, UK's FTSE 100 increased an 0.57%. Germany's DAX hiked an 0.74%, while France's CAC 40 inched down an 0.09%. And in Asia, Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index futures rose an 0.16%, while Shanghai Composite lost an 0.05%. And that brings us to the end of our economic bulletin, and here's what we have been covering. U.S. consumer confidence falls to nearly 5-year low in April. And the World Bank forecasts global commodity prices to fall 12% in 2025. And this concludes our economic bulletin. Don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at QNewsEG to stay informed. And thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more updates on Q.